committee will come to order. We will now resume consideration of the CJS bill. That bill currently includes amendments adopted by roll call vote, the manager's package, and a voice vote. Let me begin by withdrawing my own motion to vitiate the vote on reporting the CJS bill as amended during last week's markup. Next, I would recognize Senator Moran to offer an amendment.
Thank you, Chairman Collins and my colleagues. First of all, let me do a couple of things that I was unable to do in the past conversation. First of all, by recognizing the contribution that Senator Merkley is intending and attempting to make. And I am one who would be interested in trying to figure out ways, maybe that's I worry about putting us all in the old Senate chamber and having a conversation, because then once again we are separating the appropriators from the Senate, our colleagues, not always to our advantage, but I'm willing to participate in a conversation about how we retain our constitutional and fulfill our constitutional responsibilities and fulfill our obligations, and to find ways that we can continue to be colleagues that find solutions to problems despite our differences. And secondly, I want to indicate that in the manager's package of the Milcon VA bill, we were successful in adding an amendment, and I want to thank the chairman and the ranking member for doing so. This is COFA and our ability to continue to have solid relationships with those who served in our military and the countries in which they come from and live in. And it's an important issue, should be to all of us, but particularly to our colleagues from Hawaii and elsewhere. And Senator Boozman and Senator Ossoff allowed us to, and by us, I mean Senator Schatz and I, to add an amendment. It follows a meeting that we had, we being Senator Risch, Senator Boozman, and myself, where the word is me, the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, the chairman of Milcon VA, and the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, because we're concerned that the Department of Veterans Affairs is not following the mandate that we have required them to follow in providing medical care and benefits to those who live in the South Pacific that served in our military. And so I want to highlight that language that is important to Senator Schatz has been included, and I will continue to work as chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, and Senator Boozman as chairman of the Appropriations Subcommittee with jurisdiction. And I would tell you that Senator Risch is fully engaged in trying to make certain that the Department of Veterans Affairs takes a different tact and a different approach to this issue in following congressional mandate. When I complimented or indicated my interest in finding a way forward, I also would add one more thing. This committee and our subcommittees need to, I don't know whether it's returned, because it hasn't been that prevalent in the time I've been a member of the Appropriations Committee, which is my entire time in the Senate, but oversight. When we find things that we don't like in the bill, it embarrasses me that I don't know that. But with our schedules and just the press of business, our ability to do oversight is woefully lacking. And we ought to figure out, as committee chairman and vice chairman of our subcommittees, how our subcommittees not only appropriate, but then make sure that the money that we appropriated is rightfully used according to the law. To turn to the bill at hand, it has been described to all of you last Thursday, a week ago today, and I thank I thank the chairwoman and the ranking member for allowing this bill to be further considered today. At the beginning of the markup of Commerce, Justice, Science last week, the committee voted to report this bill on a strong bipartisan vote of 21-6. I would highlight and repeat what I said last week. This is a bill that, in the absence of Senator Van Hollen's amendment, I would have expected to pass unanimously. And by saying that, I cast no criticism of Senator Van Hollen. I had the pleasure of chairing and being the ranking member, the vice chairman of this subcommittee with Senator Shaheen, and I can tell, and I told Senator Van Hollen, I hated the fact that Senator Shaheen was going someplace else. But I can tell you that, in my view, Senator Van Hollen and I have worked well together, and this bill reflects the priorities that he fought for his constituency, and for the constituency of all of us in this room, and for the benefit of the Senate and the country. And I have no objection to Senator Van Hollen's efforts and attempts to make certain that his position and reflecting the desire of his state is heard and considered. There's a challenge that comes with that, because my overriding effort has been to find a path forward, which is why we drafted the bill that we drafted. And I suppose there's a way that we could draft a bill with only Republican support in this committee. But my goal is not to make a statement. My goal is to make legislation. And I want to see us report a bill to the committee that you all can be supportive of, and that amendment makes it impossible to do. This legislation supports, under the allocation that we've been given, and I thank the chairman and the ranking member for the allocation, but under the allocation we've been given, we have made every effort to adequately support things that are really important to the country. This bill, Commerce, Justice, Science, does lots of things, and it's involved in lots of things that really matter. And it's about the Department of Commerce and the growth. It's about science and NASA and NSF. And we've made the attempt to find the highest number of resources with the most responsibility for how they're spent that we can do with the dollars that we have to spend. In addition to that, things that stood out to us, law enforcement, Department of Justice and its grant programs to our local law enforcement, sheriffs and police chiefs and their departments, in regard to NOAA and weather forecasting, and in regard to NSF and the future of our scientific capabilities that benefit our economy and our national security. After that vote that we took last week, the initial bipartisan vote, the committee adopted 3 amendments. The manager's package, an amendment by the ranking member that was adopted on a voice vote, and then an amendment from Senator Van Hollen on the funding for the FBI headquarters building. As we talked last week, there is money that was placed in this bill a decade ago for purposes of an FBI headquarters. We have not appropriated that money, and it has sat in our account for a long time. This committee really has little jurisdiction, I should say no jurisdiction, over the GSA in determining the site for which this FBI headquarters should rest. The amendment that Senator Van Hollen, in his effort to deal with this issue of the FBI headquarters, the adoption of that amendment caused then a significant shift in the votes in this committee. I've never seen what we did last week, but we did something new and different. And unfortunately, the result of that was this bill is currently failing on a vote of 13 ayes and 14 nays. I opposed that amendment. I believe it was prescriptive and it interjects this committee into site selection process. And if we have a role, if it's in the Appropriations Committee, it better rests with FSGG and the GSA. In my view, I listened to the concerns that we all had, and there was a theme. There was more than one theme in the conversation, but one of the themes was, could we get to the point in which we actually appropriate and put bills on the Senate floor? I was telling one of our colleagues today that, with a smile, because it's not true, in Kansas, you can only lie if you admit you're lying. when I was a little boy in western Kansas and sat on my front porch of my parents' house and dreamed about being a United States Senator, it was not a dream. I'll say it this way. I dreamed about spending every day doing nominations and confirmations. I want something different here. I want to see us have a role to play and a significant role to play. And as we talked earlier, one of the things that's important in getting us to that position is that bills are considered by subcommittees, considered by this committee, and reported, and then we go to battle to educate and can get the confirmation from our colleagues that we're doing something right. There is, I mentioned this in earlier remarks, there's a sense about this committee of being separate from the rest of our colleagues. And the floor action is where everybody should get a chance, and we've been denied that either by the bills not coming to the floor, or even if they do, they come in packages of such magnitude that there's no time for amendments. We limit the scope. And so we have a lot of work to do to revive the value and importance of what we do here with our colleagues and with our process. So it brings me back to this bill. I'm back on the mission that I told you that I was on last week when we considered this legislation. It is essential for us to enact the CJS bill this year, but let's do it in a way that gets 60 votes on the Senate floor or more. Absent the amendment that Senator Van Hollen offered, this is a strong bipartisan bill that supports things that every member of this committee brought to our attention. And if we're going to get this bipartisan bill out of the committee, we need to address the amendment that cost us the number of votes to do so. It cost us the bipartisan support that we had when we started last Thursday's markup. Therefore, I'm going to offer an amendment that strikes the amendment from Senator Van Hollen that was adopted on a recorded vote. This amendment has, again, I take things personally too, and my intention is to continue to be an ally and friend of the vice chairman of this subcommittee and to find ways in which we can continue to cooperate to provide all of you the opportunity to vote on a bill this year and into the future that has value to the country. So this is the next step, in my view, is to return this bill to the bipartisan situation it was in before the adoption of that amendment. So I respectfully offer the following amendment to strike Senator Van Hollen's amendment. And that would require me to have the language that says that. On page 86, I offer the following amendment. On page 86, line 5 of the bill, strike the new section adopted through the amendment entitled Van Hollen, Ray, FBI Headquarters.
Are there other senators who wish to speak on this amendment? Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Chair Collins. And I want to start where I started last week, I think it was exactly a week ago, which is thanking my colleague, Senator Moran and his team, for working to put together what was overall a very strong piece of legislation for Commerce State Justice. It didn't have all the resources we wanted to be able to work with, but I think with what we were allocated, we chose wisely. And again, I want to thank you for that effort. But I have to say, having just sat through the conversation before the break about what this committee can do to uphold bipartisanship, this is the opposite. Because what happened was a bipartisan amendment that was adopted is now being proposed to be stripped out in what I agree with Senator Moran and all our checking is an unprecedented way. And I want to underscore the fact that my original amendment with respect to the funds that have been set aside to build the FBI at a site that was selected was not just about Maryland and Van Hollen. This was actually a bipartisan process over many years. And what happened was the Trump administration came in and they proposed a de facto rescission of the funds. This is exactly what we were talking about last night in a different form, because those monies had been set aside for the purpose, not of going to Maryland, but of going to the site that was selected through a nonpartisan process of experts that would meet the security requirements of the men and women of the FBI and the mission requirements of the FBI. This has been a long bipartisan process. And so when we got the request for reprogramming from the FBI, I had hoped that we would, on a bipartisan basis, say, no, we're not going to accept your reprogramming request because it flies in the face of longstanding bipartisan support for this process. We did not do that. And so I offered the amendment to make sure that we defend that process. And Madam Chair, I do want to just take a moment for our colleagues to emphasize again the bipartisan nature of this decision over many years, because this battle is not going away. You know, as the chairman said, it became a partisan vote, but it was only a partisan vote because the Republican side of the committee decided to vote no after a bipartisan amendment was adopted. And so this is a microcosm of the overall challenge that we are facing. And I would have hoped that as a committee that we stood up for that bipartisan decision. So let me just, Madam Chair, I'm going to put a couple things in the record, because I want to make it clear once and for all that this is not just a process that was invented by Senator Van Hollen. It was actually invented by all of us, where we delegated the decision to the FBI and the GSA. And it began many, many years ago, actually, when a prospectus was submitted to the Congress. The way this works is the Environment and Public Works Committee in the Senate and the House Transportation Committee look at prospectuses that are proposed for new buildings. And the prospectus was adopted on a bipartisan, unanimous basis by those committees years ago. And just to make it clear that this was not a sort of one-sided democratic process, the chair of the House Transportation Committee was Bill Schuster. And the chair of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee at the time was Senator Jim Inhofe. They adopted the prospectus. And here's what the prospectus said, and I'm quoting: "The facility will be built to meet ISC," these are the security requirements, ISC level 5 security specifications on one of the 3 previously identified sites. 2 had been identified in Maryland, 1 in Virginia. So there you have, on a bipartisan basis, a decision being made that whichever of those 3 sites won the competition to meet the security and mission requirements of the FBI would be chosen. It didn't end there.
The document will be included in the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. It didn't end there. If you look, and I'm not going to belabor all the reporting that this committee has done over time on this issue, but suffice to say that this committee has made clear what the purpose of the funds were, both in the Department of Justice FBI account and in the GSA account, which is in the FISG bill. But just for one example, this is the omnibus bill that we all of us who were here at the time back in 2022 voted for, at least those of us who voted for the bill, which I think most of the members of the Appropriations Committee did. It says this: "The administrator of the General Services Administration shall select a site from one of the 3 listed in the General Services Administration's fiscal year 2017 prospectus," which I just read from, "for a new facility, Consolidated Federal Bureau of Investigation's headquarters. Such decision shall be made in an expeditious manner as possible." So again, the authorizing committees on a bipartisan basis set up this process to pick from one of 3 sites, because all 3 sites were determined that time to meet the security requirements, but they wanted to pick the best one. And we ratified that. And I would ask that this be submitted for the record, Madam Chair.
Without objection.
And I would ask, Madam Chair, that the final decision announcement from the GSA be put in the record.
Without
And
objection.
it wasn't Van Hollen or Senator Murkowski or anybody else that picked this site. It was the result of a process set up in a bipartisan way by all of us around this table. And that's what I was trying to protect. Now, I do want to say one more thing, because my view is that we should be preserving decisions that we previously made. And everything we just talked about before the break was about that. And here was our opportunity to do it. In my view, we did. And now we're trying to undo it. All of a sudden, the FBI decided that they wanted to move to the Ronald Reagan building. No security analysis, no cost estimate. And I would just remind my colleagues that when President Trump came into office last time, he also did not want to move to one of these 3 sites. He wanted to keep the FBI building in its current location. And they came down and provided a 2-pager, which we haven't even gotten a 2-pager yet, to my knowledge, but they came down here and they said, this is going to meet all the requirements. It's going to meet the security requirements, and it's going to meet the mission requirements. Well, that's what they say now. At least they've said that to some people. They've informed staff that they have just done a walkthrough and they haven't determined what the security situation is. That's something to come, even though they're considering putting people in the building before they do that. But colleagues, I do just want to say that when the first Trump administration proposed to essentially renovate the existing Hoover building for the FBI headquarters and made these representations that it was going to be just fine, that there were 2 Inspector General reports issued. One was the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. And they found, and I encourage my colleagues to read it carefully, that in fact, the proposal did not meet the level 5 security requirements that had been established on a bipartisan basis. That was what the Inspector General of the Justice Department concluded with respect to that earlier proposal. And I ask unanimous consent that this Inspector General's document be put in the record.
Without objection.
And it wasn't just the DOJ Inspector General. It was also the Inspector General of GSA. They reached similar conclusions about the earlier Trump administration's proposal to keep the headquarters where it was and determined that representations that had been made that it would meet the security requirements were just unfounded. And I ask unanimous consent that this Inspector General's report be put in the record.
Without objection.
Now, colleagues, finally, I would point out that there's a statute that was adopted when the Ronald Reagan building was created, making it clear what the purposes of that building were, including a number of tenants and the International Trade Administration is supposed to be a sort of a center for trade and commerce. And there are also a lot of other tenants in that building now, some public agencies, the National Children's Museum, a non-public agency, is part of that building. We've seen no plan as to what's supposed to happen to all those tenants in the building. So we have to be real that this was something that thought has not really been put into it. We have a selected site that was based on competition, based on an analysis of security requirements, based on analysis of FBI mission requirements. It took way too long, I'll acknowledge that. But a decision was finally made pursuant to a bipartisan process that I didn't set up, we all set it up. And now they propose to undo that. So I would say this is a microcosm of exactly what we were talking about before the break. Whether this committee is going to stand up for the work it's done on a bipartisan basis. I didn't know that Maryland would be selected in the end. But that's the process we set up. And that is why that bipartisan amendment was important. And Madam Chair, we talk about 60 votes on the floor of the Senate. I would suggest that it's pretty crazy that this amendment that was to stand up for congressional prerogatives would then be the reason our Republican colleagues on the committee decide not to support it? That's exactly the problem that we've been having. It's not just the President of the United States. It's all of us. And so I will strongly oppose this amendment. And I have to say, Madam Chair, that as I said earlier, if this is stripped out, I will change my vote to no. And again, not just because of this, it's Maryland. I mean, this goes to the heart of everything we've been talking about here. Reversing a decision and process that we made over many years. So I appreciate my colleagues listening to me about this. It's not going away because we have collectively have spoken on it for very many years. And I would urge the director of the FBI to not try to rush to move in to the FBI building. First of all, because they haven't done the security analysis. They're going to need this committee for additional resources going forward. The resources that we put aside over many years were a down payment. And in my view, this has been an abuse of process. And so it's going to be hard to envision sustaining support for a decision that undid what we did over so many years and resulted in a competition, a choice in a competition. None of us knew what the result would be, but it was made. We set up the process, and now we're not sticking with it. So, Madam Chair and colleagues, I urge you to vote against the motion to strike, and if it carries, I hope we will vote against final passage, as much as that pains me because of all the other good things that were in there. But I can't understand why a bipartisan amendment standing up for what we've done on a bipartisan basis over the years would cause our colleagues to flip on the other side. It's the root of the problem that we're dealing with.
Are there other members who wish to speak on this amendment? Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And colleagues, I think it's pretty evident that I was the that put the bipartisan in the Van Hollen amendment last week. It caused the committee to perhaps be a little more rambunctious than the chairwoman would have liked, or that I would have liked, or that the chairman or any of us would have liked. And it was certainly not my intention to be purposefully disruptive, but it was my intention to try to discern a little more information about how we arrived to the decision within this CJS bill with regards to the Ronald Reagan building as opposed to the history. And I think that our colleague from Maryland has articulated well. It has been a long and I think very tortured history, actually, one that has been contentious throughout, whether it is a debate over Maryland versus Virginia, or perhaps to Alabama, or back here in the district. And I said, I don't have a dog in this fight. I just don't. But I do have a question, and I do want to try to understand better how we came to this place. And in doing so, that caused the hearing to be put into a recess until this time. And I appreciate truly the indulgence of the chairwoman, of all on the committee, of the vice chair, in allowing me that time as a member of the Appropriations Committee to ask the questions that I felt were important, that I kind of feel is part of my job. We had a discussion earlier, and my colleague sitting next to me had the list of all of these programs that have been included in various bills that came out of this committee that DOJ has identified that we didn't like, and I think probably most of our colleagues would like, but it kind of begs the question, did we not ask enough questions? Is that not our role as appropriators in our subcommittees as we're working through? And so sometimes taking the time to ask the questions, I think, is important. So thank you for giving me the opportunity of that time. But what I do not want to have happen is that this process within the CJS subcommittee or any of our appropriations bills moving forward not be able to advance. We had a little discussion earlier, and many have stated, I think it was you, Vice Chair Murray, you said you don't want to turn the appropriations process into the rescission committee. We don't want to do that. I mentioned earlier, I don't want us to give the OMB director his wish that we become as a committee more partisan. I don't think that that reflects well on us. I don't think it reflects well on the Congress. And so sometimes you have to say, all right, you've asked your question, you got your answer. Are you 100% satisfied? No. But do I want more than anything for a good bill that has been negotiated by two good people and gotten to a place where I think most of us are really very comfortable with the exception of one issue. And so I cannot stand by and say, well, because of this, I'm going to let not only the CJS appropriations measure fail, but potentially the rest of the process. If we're going to figure out how we work together, we have to be able to do it beginning in this room before we get to the floor. So I have no doubt, Senator Van Hollen, that you will be just as energetic on the floor in defense of your measure. And I have no doubt that those who have been involved in the history of this will engage in that. But I want us to be able to have that debate on the floor. And so we have to be able to advance this measure out of committee. And that is why I will support the chairman of the subcommittee's proposal here and will vote to strike the amendment that I supported last week to prohibit the FBI from using previously appropriated funds for the move. I want to just share briefly, because we will have plenty of opportunity to discuss this on the floor, but I did have an opportunity to have a good conversation with the director of the FBI. And I was joined by the chairman and the chairman of the subcommittee in that meeting. And I came away with a satisfaction that my questions had been answered. I still have reservations about the move, I'll be frank with you, but I don't believe that we should lock the FBI into the Greenbelt location, which that amendment would do. I don't think that there's any disagreement. If any of us have seen the Hoover building, there's no disagreement that it's not a situation that needs to be left standing for another decade, much less 2 decades. I'm told that if we wait another 10 years for a new location, what's going to happen is we're going to be spending more money putting Band-Aids on the old facility only for that building to be sold and demolished. That's not a good outcome. That, to me, is throwing good money after bad. There's history, as Senator Van Hollen has noted. Some of it is just plain old site evaluation. Some of it is a little bit of political intrigue. I have no interest in going down that rabbit hole. But I asked the question, well, what happened after 2023 when the decision was made to go to the Greenbelt property? And we heard the concerns there expressed by Director Ray at the time. About the potential for conflicts of interest. So there's a lot out there that is worthy of exploration. The process isn't perfect. I'm not convinced that we've got enough information to know that ultimately the Ronald Reagan building is going to be the best location.
Excuse me,
But-
Senator
go ahead.
Murkowski. I know that Senator Capito needs to go, and I wondered if I could request unanimous consent for her to record her vote on final passage.
I'd like to change my vote from a no to an aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Madam
Thank
Chairman,
you,
I
Senator
will be
Murkowski.
quick in my conclusions here. But I want to share with colleagues just how I came to get to a better place. It was not Director Patel who just kind of woke up one day and said, I think I want to go over to the Ronald Reagan building. The GSA, I worked through a process to identify locations. They were the ones that were lead on selecting the Ronald Reagan building with input from career FBI folks. They looked at things like the proximity, the cost, the security, and whether it meets the Bureau's needs. They have conducted the initial assessment to determine whether it's worth moving forward with. But there is a further security review that is going to be conducted by a third party that is moving forward. And so you look at that, you look at the time it would take to build out the Greenbelt facility, the cost, all that's associated with that. And then again, the reality that we're faced with this at this point in time is trying to throw good money after bad in a building that just is not in a condition that we would accept, and arguing for the next 10 years and spending much, much, much more than we would with an existing facility in the city. So I've come to this decision based on the conversations that I've had with Kash Patel. I would encourage any members, either on this committee or off the committee, to have the same conversations, to have the same discussions. I do want to note for colleagues, though, that I hope that we are not going to see any funds being reprogrammed to the effort by GSA right now. Right now, we're talking about CJS here in this committee. But what's going to happen if this bill becomes law with the CJS reprogramming? FBI is going to have over $500 million. And I think that we can assess the GSA reprogramming over the next year after we know more about the security assessments and the other project components that I think Senator Van Hollen has noted. So I thank you for the indulgence, not only in giving me the time to share where I have come from on this, but also recognizing that it has delayed a good bill an additional week, and I would like to see it move through the process. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Are there other senators who wish to speak on the amendment?
Madam Chair, I will be brief.
Thank you.
I just want to, again, say where I agree with Senator Murkowski, and I appreciate the conversations that we have had. And where we all agree is that we'd like to move the CJS bill forward with respect to the other provisions. I think where we disagree is that after adopting the amendment, now we have, we're back in a situation where I think many colleagues, unfortunately, have said that they would not allow it to move forward with that provision in it. I want to just make a point in closing. We had hoped to have a bipartisan briefing with the director of the FBI. I think Vice Chair Murray asked that it be bipartisan so that we could all hear together what the director of the FBI said. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And finally, I want to include in the record, Madam Chair, the final evaluation of GSA site selection by the Inspector General of the GSA. Senator Murkowski is right. There were issues that were raised, allegations of conflict of interest. Well, the GSA Inspector General looked into it, and here's the final report. And they said that there was nothing that happened that should change the final decision with respect to site selection. I ask that this be included in the record. And I'll finally say, I agree with you. We should get going with this building. We should get going with this building. That's what, it took way too long. I would agree with my colleagues. This process has been too tortured. But finally, we had a decision. This is February 3rd, 2025. They're ready to go. And now what we're doing actually is going to, I think, delay the entire process all over again. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The clerk will call the roll on the amendment offered by Chairman Moran.
Senator McConnell.
Senator McConnell votes aye by proxy.
Senator Murkowski.
Aye.
Senator Graham.
Aye.
Senator Moran.
Aye.
Senator Hoven. Aye. Senator Bozeman. Aye. Senator Capito.
Senator Capito votes aye by proxy.
Senator Kennedy.
Senator Kennedy votes aye by proxy.
Senator Hyde Smith.
Aye.
Senator Hagerty.
Aye.
Senator Britt. Senator Mullen. Senator Fisher. Senator Rounds. Senator Murray.
No.
Senator Durbin.
No.
Senator Reed.
No.
Senator Shaheen. No. Senator Merkley. Senator Coons. Senator Schatz. Senator Baldwin. Senator Murphy. Senator Van Hollen. Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters.
No by proxy.
Senator Gillibrand. Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
Aye. On this vote, there are 15 ayes and 14 nays. The amendment is agreed to.
Madam Chair,
Senator Durbin.
I ask consent to be shown no on final passage on the bill.
Senator Durbin will be recorded as no on reporting the bill. Senator Reed.
Madam Chairman, likewise.
Senator Reed will be reported as voting no on the bill. Senator
Collins.
Fisher.
Madam Chair, I'd like to be recorded yes.
Senator Fisher will be recorded as voting yes. Senator Mullen.
I'd like to be reported yes on the bill.
Senator Mullen will be recorded as voting yes. Senator Britt.
I would like to be recorded as yes on final passage.
Senator Britt will be recorded as voting yes. Senator Hagerty.
Hagerty is yes on final package. Thank you.
Senator Hagerty will be recorded as voting yes.
I'd like to also be recorded as voting yes. on final
Senator Hyde Smith will be recorded as voting yes.
Madam Chair.
Senator Rounds.
I would like to be recorded as yes on the final vote, please.
Senator Rounds will be recorded as voting yes. Senator
Likewise,
Bozeman. Senator Bozeman will be recorded as voting yes.
Madam Chair, I'd like to be recorded as yes on final passage of the bill.
Senator Hoven will be recorded as voting yes.
Madam Chair.
Senator Murray, let me just finish this side just for,
Madam Chairman, I'd like to change my vote from no to aye.
Senator has that right and will be recorded as voting aye. Senator Graham.
I'd like to be recorded as voting aye. Thank you.
Senator Graham will be recorded as voting aye.
Murkowski asked to be recorded as voting aye on final passage.
Senator Murkowski will be recorded as voting aye. Senator Murray.
Senator Murray would like to be recorded as voting no on final passage.
Senator Murray will be recorded as voting no. Senator Merkley. I'm sorry.
No.
Senator Merkley will be recorded as voting no. Senator Baldwin.
I would like to be recorded as voting no.
Senator Baldwin will be recorded as voting no. Senator Murphy. Senator Murphy will be recorded as voting no. Senator Van Hollen, I think you already are recorded as voting no. Senator Gillibrand.
I'd like to be recorded as a no.
Senator Gillibrand will be recorded as voting no. Are there other senators who wish to change their vote, except for myself? Senator Collins wishes to be recorded as voting aye.
You can report.
Yes. The clerk is tallying the votes.
Is he green? Down, non-desk. What is Ossoff gonna do? I think Senator Peters is on his way.
Okay.
Is he on his way? Yeah. Okay. Senator Peters is on his way.
It's my understanding that Senator Peters is on his way.
Do we know how far out he is? Do we know where he is?
It stops, it's literally walking here, so it's very close. The one option is like you can keep going, and then he comes in.
Yeah, are there any other amendments?
Yeah,
No.
Baldwin has.
Baldwin.
Moran will, I think, go back and forth a little bit.
This is where we are right now. As soon as Peter gets here, we'll be here.
Okay, but if there's other amendments, which I'm just told, why didn't you do those first?
Because we had to get.
While we're awaiting Senator Peters' arrival, it's my understanding that there's one further amendment to be offered by Senator Baldwin. Would you like to proceed, Senator Baldwin?
Yes. Madam Chair, last week I offered an amendment to restore the over 1,500 grants that have been terminated by this administration at the National Science Foundation. Every single state represented on this committee has had funding canceled. That includes nearly $18 million in grants previously awarded by NSF to universities in Wisconsin. These were research projects focused on increasing women's participation in STEM fields, middle school engagements in mathematics, and researching bioethical impacts in genomics. It includes just over $70,000 in already awarded funding to universities in Maine, over $400,000 in West Virginia, just under $1 million in South Dakota, over $2 million in North Dakota, over $3 million in Alaska, over $5 million in South Carolina, over $6 million in Nebraska, nearly $7 million in Oklahoma, over $7 million in Kentucky, nearly $8 million in Mississippi, nearly $9 million in Arkansas, nearly $10 million in Kansas, nearly $11 million in Louisiana, over $13 million in Tennessee, over $30 million in Alabama. I heard your concerns last week, Mr. Chairman of the subcommittee, with the original amendment and have drafted a modified version to address the concerns that you raised verbally at committee. We've also provided drafts to your staff during the course of this past week, and I hope that now where we say this version would restore NSF grants but includes exceptions for cases of cancellation due to financial mismanagement, research fraud, or malfeasance. Mr. Chairman of the subcommittee, those were the additional characteristics that you wanted included. Grants awarded by NSF are critically important to ensure that America maintains our global leadership in scientific research. and development, and we must ensure that funds we support in these committee remain available for that purpose. And so I urge my colleagues to support this modified amendment.
For Senator Moran response, Senator Peters has arrived, and I wanted to give him the opportunity, if you are changing your vote or keeping your vote, on reporting the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would like to be recorded as a no on the CJS
Thank you.
bill.
After accounting for the vote changes on the motion to report the bill favorably, there are 20 ayes and 9 nays. The motion to report is agreed to, and the bill is reported as amended. I apologize for interrupting the debate on this amendment. Senator Moran.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator Baldwin, I meant in my opening remarks to indicate that I failed to accomplish what I intended to do between last Thursday and this Thursday in having conversations with you, and I know that you have submitted some amendments to your amendment that you offered last week. I'm not yet prepared to support your amendment, but having failed you in my commitment that I would work with you, I restate that if I have any credibility to see that we get this into to make sure that it's in a form that is satisfactory.
Are there further comments? Senator Murray.
The amendment that Senator Baldwin has offered is really important, and I really want to thank her for offering it. This committee has, on a bipartisan basis, provided critical funding for the National Science Foundation to propel exactly the sort of cutting-edge scientific research that has really made America the envy of the world. But unfortunately, since taking office, President Trump has not only failed to get these funds out for this fiscal year, he has actually terminated hundreds of existing research awards. Those cancellations have really cut off some really vital research and support for STEM education, just as one example. This is a massive own goal for our country, and these terminations, they've got to be reversed. And I strongly support this amendment to restore the canceled grants. I really encourage my colleagues to support this amendment.
I share the senator's concerns about canceled grants that apparently are arbitrary cancellations. I do think that the list is not comprehensive enough, and I would like very much to work with the senator to expand the grounds for cancellation, since I think that the 3 that are included are all valid ones, but are not comprehensive enough. And I, too, would like to join with Chairman Moran in working with the senator to come up with additional grants, because there's no doubt that arbitrary cancellation of important grants is a serious problem.
I would like to press on with this amendment. I think we'll be in better stead for negotiation if it's already in the base bill.
Is there further debate on the amendment? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
No by proxy.
Senator Murkowski.
No.
Senator Graham.
No by proxy.
Senator Moran. No. Senator Hoeven.
No by proxy.
Senator Bozeman.
No by proxy.
Senator Capito.
No by proxy.
Senator Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
No by proxy.
Senator Hagerty.
No by proxy.
Senator Britt. Senator Mullen.
No by proxy.
Senator Fisher.
No by proxy.
Senator Rounds.
No by proxy.
Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Reed.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Shaheen.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Merkley.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Coons.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Schatz.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator Murphy.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Van Hollen.
Aye.
Senator Heinrich,
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters,
Aye by proxy.
Senator Gillibrand,
Aye by proxy.
Senator Ossoff,
Aye by proxy.
Chair Collins.
No. On this vote, there are 14 ayes and 15 nays. The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, I would
Senator
ask
Baldwin.
unanimous consent to have my vote cast right before we recessed for the votes on the floor. I was voted aye by proxy on the Merkley amendment. If I could be recorded as though I were present.
Absolutely. We will reflect that you were present for the vote.
I do want to make a closing statement.
Okay. Senator Murray, do you have a closing?
Collins.
Senator, let me take care of
Excuse me, Senator Murray. Senator Collins, Senator Murray, thank you for your
Senator Murray.
efforts to make this bill available for consideration and action by this committee. Senator Hollen, despite the challenges that we face in regard to a particular issue, thank you for the cooperation that in working together to get a bill that has come out of the subcommittee, and we'll continue to work to see that we broaden its support. And I thank you for your consideration. I want to thank Senator Van Hollen's staff, Jessica Berry, Blaise Sheridan, Michael Bennett-Charik, Chick, Lindsay Erickson, and my own CJS staff, Rachel Taylor, Brian Danner, and Kevin Wheeler.
It's my understanding that Senator Schatz is on his way back to alter his vote. In the meantime, I would call upon Senator Murray for her closing statement.
Madam Chair, I'm really glad we were able to advance a good Milcon VA bill out of this committee today. I am really disappointed the CJS bill was advanced on a partisan basis, particularly under these circumstances. I am worried about how much harder our work will become as partisan rescissions have now become the new reality, and I will press on to try to make headway, and I hope members of this committee will work to make our process work better, not worse, and make sure that our voices are heard by passing full-year bills and not turning even more power over to this OMB. Just today, as was mentioned earlier, Russ Vought said he believes the appropriations process should be less bipartisan. That is his goal. Make us less bipartisan and therefore less effective, and he is doing his best to chip away at our bipartisan record and our power of the purse. It is really clear there is going to be another rescission package. It is clear that this fight is not over. So every one of my colleagues are going to have to decide, do they agree with Russ Vought? Do they want to be less bipartisan? Or do we, as members of the Senate, want to assert our authority and protect our bipartisan process and deliver for our constituents? This is the budget chief who ignores our laws, and he rubs it in our faces. He does not respect the role of this committee or any appropriator here, Republican or Democrat. So I do hope we can stand together and stand for our communities and stand up for Congress as a co-equal branch of this government. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Murray, thank you for your comments. I would point out to everyone that this is the fourth bill that we have reported on an overwhelmingly bipartisan basis. There have been some partisan votes on amendments. That is not unusual in years past. But my hope is that we can continue to work in a bipartisan way, a goal that I completely share with you. Now that I've filled in the time for Senator Schatz.
Thank you for your very able vamping, I'd like to be recorded as a no on final. I'm sorry for the delay.
Thank you, Senator Schatz. After accounting for the vote changes, on the motion to report the CJS bill favorably, there are 19 ayes and 10 nays. The motion to report is agreed to, and the bill is reported as amended. I want to close this meeting by taking a moment to again thank the members of this committee and their staffs for all the hard work on the bipartisan bills that we've reported as a committee so far. The best way for us to counter what has been said by the OMB director is to continue to work in a bipartisan way. And I hope that we are going to do so. As I've said before, we are operating under difficult circumstances. However, those circumstances make it even more essential that we redouble our efforts to ensure that our government is funded in a timely way that affects inputs and priorities of the people of this country and their elected representatives. I want to again thank you, Vice Chair Murray. This committee plans to reconvene soon to consider additional appropriations bills, and an announcement will be forthcoming. And again, I want to emphasize that Majority Leader John Thune has committed to bringing appropriations bills approved by this committee before the full Senate for consideration. That is extremely important. It did not happen last year, and I hope we can work together to ensure that that effort is successful. This meeting of the Senate Appropriations Committee is now adjourned.